You're standing in the checkout line and your phone buzzes. It's not a fun notification. It's the kind that makes your stomach tighten before you even read it. A message from your landlord, or your kid's school, or your boss asking you to call. You look at the total on the screen in front you, nothing dramatic, just normal groceries, but suddenly the numbers feel louder. Not because you can't pay today, you can. It's because you can already see the next few days. The payment that will hit before your next payday, the automatic charge you forgot about, the small repair that has been getting worse and now can't be ignored. And the most unsettling part is this. You don't know how big the problem is going to be yet. You're not panicking. You're doing math in your head, quietly. You're calculating how many things you could delay without consequences. You're imagining which conversation would be worse, asking for more time or asking for help. This is usually the moment people start searching for a single answer. One number that will make the uncertainty stop, one number that will let you breathe again. That number is often called an emergency fund. The common advice sounds clean. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. It's a reasonable idea. If your income disappears for a while, you still need to eat, pay rent, keep the lights on, and get to work. So 3 to 6 months feels like a seatbelt. It feels like being responsible. But if you've ever tried to apply that rule to real life, you've probably hit a weird problem. Which expenses count? Is it everything you spend in a month, or only what you can't avoid? And if it's only the unavoidable bills, what happens to the rest of life, the parts you don't want to lose, but you technically could? Then the question gets heavier. What if you're not a months of expenses person at all? What if your income isn't consistent, or your family depends on you, or your job market isn't predictable, or your health costs don't behave like a spreadsheet? Now the rule that was supposed to calm you down starts to feel vague. 3 months of what exactly? And the vagueness matters, because when people can't translate advice into something concrete, they tend to do one of two things. They overcorrect and try to save an amount so large that it becomes discouraging, or they quietly give up and keep an emergency fund that's more like a hopeful gesture than a plan. Even government guidance avoids giving a single universal number. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says the amount you need depends on your situation and suggests looking at the unexpected expenses you've actually had in the past to set a goal. That's not them dodging the question. It's them pointing at something most rules skip. The shape of emergencies isn't the same for everyone. So here's the calm truth. Emergency cash is not primarily a months of expenses problem. It's a timing problem. How much emergency cash you need depends on 2 clocks that start ticking the moment something goes wrong. Clock 1 is how long it takes your income to recover, getting your next paycheck, finding the next job, getting paid by a client, getting back to full hours. Clock 2 is how long it takes your money to move, how quickly you can turn the resources you already have into spendable cash without damage. When those clocks are slow, you need a bigger cash buffer. When those clocks are fast, you may need less cash than the rule suggests, even if your expenses are high. This is the reframe. Emergency cash is the amount that buys you time for your financial system to catch up. Not time in theory, time you can actually use. And that's why the shocking math in this video is not a trick. It's just what happens when you stop treating every expense like it behaves the same. A lot of expenses are loud but flexible. Subscriptions can be paused, some plans can be downgraded, a few purchases can be delayed, even some bills can be negotiated if you call early. Other expenses are quiet but absolute. Rent, basic food, medication, minimum debt payments, transportation that keeps you employable. The months of expenses rule mixes all of that into one bucket, then multiplies it. It's like measuring rainfall by counting days without asking whether it drizzles or floods. And there's a second thing the rule misses. Emergency cash isn't only about paying. It's about decision-making under stress. If you don't have cash, you don't just lose money. You lose options. You lose time to think. The CFPB warns that without savings, even a minor financial shock can set you back and can turn into debt with lasting impact, including reliance on credit cards or loans, and even pulling from retirement funds. That's a mechanism, not a moral lesson. When cash is thin, the emergency starts choosing for you. It chooses the fastest money, not the cheapest money. It chooses the payment with the biggest consequence if you miss it, not the payment that's most rational long-term. And once you start using expensive short-term money to solve a short-term problem, the problem often stops being short-term. Here's the invisible mechanism that makes the math feel shocking when you first see it. Think of your financial life as a bridge you walk across every month. Your paycheck lands on one side. Your bills are on the other. In between is the gap of time days, sometimes weeks, where money is moving in one direction and obligations are moving in the other. When everything is normal, you barely notice the bridge. The bridge is just your checking account balance rising and falling. An emergency doesn't only add a new cost, it changes the bridge. It can make the gap wider, because income is delayed or reduced. It can make the surface slippery, because the same amount of money now needs to cover more timing mistakes. And it can add weight, because stress makes you more likely to miss small details that matter. That's why two people with the same monthly expenses can need very different emergency cash. Person A has a stable paycheck every 2 weeks, a sick leave policy, and bills that can be shifted a few days without fees. Person B is self-employed, gets paid in chunks, and has bills that punish lateness immediately. Same expenses. Different bridge. The bridge is also affected by what you can convert into cash and how quickly. If your backup money is in a place that takes days to access or forces you to sell at a bad time, it may not help when the emergency is measured in hours. On paper, you can say, I have assets. In practice, the question is, can I pay for the problem before the problem creates a second problem? That second problem is usually fees, interest, damaged relationships, missed work, or a cascading set of decisions you wouldn't choose if you had room. This is one reason small expenses matter so much. The Federal Reserve's survey on household well-being asks people how they would handle a $400 emergency expense. In the 2023 data, 63% of adults said they would cover it using cash, savings, or a credit card paid off at the next statement. The other 37% said they would borrow, sell something, or wouldn't be able to cover it completely that way. And 13% said they would not be able to pay the expense right now by any means. Those are small numbers compared to a job loss, but the mechanism is the same. A small gap forces a fast solution. A fast solution often costs more than the original problem. So when people ask, how much emergency cash do I actually need? The honest answer is not a single number. It's the amount that keeps your bridge walkable when life adds weight and removes predictability. And the best part is, you can estimate that amount with calmer math than you've been told. You don't have to predict every possible emergency. You only have to understand your timing, your income timing, your bill timing, your ability to pause, negotiate, or replace expenses without creating damage. That's where emergency cash stops being a superstition and starts being a tool. Let's make this concrete with a simple illustration. Imagine a household in San Pablo with essential monthly costs of about $40,000. That includes rent, utilities, basic food, transportation, and minimum payments. Not every comfort, just the cost of stability. The income is $55,000 a month, but the timing is uneven. Salary arrives twice monthly, but overtime is unpredictable. A small side gig helps, but clients sometimes pay late. On a normal month, this household has breathing room. Not unlimited, but enough. Then an emergency shows up in an ordinary way. A motorbike repair, $6,000. It's not optional, because transportation is tied to income. If the motorbike doesn't run, work becomes slower, more expensive, or impossible. At the same time, the employer announces fewer hours for 4 weeks. Income drops, not to zero, but enough to matter. Let's say it drops by $15,000 over the month. Now look at the cash gap. Essentials are still $40,000. Income that month is effectively $40,000 instead of $55,000. Even before the repair, the breathing room is gone. Add the repair, and you have a shortfall of $6,000. If the emergency fund is only $6,000, you can pay the repair and survive the month, but the bridge becomes narrow. Because the emergency didn't remove all surprises, it only introduced the first one. Utilities might be higher. A family member might need medicine. A school expense might land early. This is where people get confused. They think the emergency fund is supposed to cover the emergency. But what it's often covering is the lack of slack. Slack is what keeps one emergency from turning into 3. If you pay the $6,000 repair and your balance goes near zero, you're exposed to timing mistakes. Maybe the side gig client pays 5 days late. Maybe a bill hits 1 day earlier than expected. Those aren't new emergencies, but they behave like emergencies when cash is tight. Instead, imagine the household has 60,000 inches emergency cash. That's not magical. It's about 1.5 months of essential costs. Now, the same events happen. You pay the $6,000 repair without hesitation. You absorb the $15,000 income drop without borrowing. And the household still has room to handle quiet expenses that arrive when life is already busy. That room prevents expensive decisions. When the gap is covered, you don't finance groceries on a credit card and carry the balance. You don't accept an overdraft fee because an automatic payment hit at the wrong hour. You don't choose between paying a bill and paying for transportation. Notice what we did. We didn't multiply total lifestyle spending by 6. We asked, if income is disrupted and a necessary expense appears, what is the cash gap that threatens stability? And how long could that gap last? That's timing, not superstition. The friction points decide the real emergency fund size. Friction point 1 is delayed income. If you're salaried, a job loss still has lags. Final pay, finding a new role, the first paycheck. The bridge needs to hold you. If you're freelance or commission-based, the lag can be stranger. You might be working, but payment arrives later or smaller. Friction point 2 is non-negotiable timing. Some payments are flexible if you call. Some aren't. Rent has a due date, debt has minimums, utilities can be cut off. These aren't moral failures, they're system structure. Friction point 3 is the cost of keeping your life functional. In many households, transportation isn't optional spending. It's access to income. Basic connectivity isn't vanity. It's how work, school, and services reach you. The emergency fund isn't only replacing a job. Sometimes it's preserving the conditions that let you get the next job. This is why some guidance starts small and scales. Fidelity suggests starting with $1,000 and working toward 3 to 6 months of essential basic living expenses. That guideline acknowledges 2 truths. Small cash cushions matter immediately, and larger cushions become relevant when disruption is longer. But the key word is essential, because psychologically, the emergency fund is not just money. It's a change in how your brain experiences time. When cash is thin, the future feels like it's leaning into you. Every decision becomes a mini crisis, because you can't tell which choice will create the next penalty. You start scanning your account the way you would scan a room for danger. And because your mind is doing threat detection, it has less capacity for planning. The emergency fund reduces mental load, not by removing risk, but by reducing decisions that feel irreversible. If you have a buffer, you can make one decision at a time. You can call and negotiate calmly. You can compare options instead of grabbing the first one. You can wait 24 hours before committing to something that will follow you for months. That waiting isn't laziness, it's optionality. It's choosing second-best speed for a better long-term outcome. And it changes behavior in ways that compound. When people are constantly under cash pressure, they pay more for the same life. Late fees, higher interest, rush solutions, stress-related mistakes, not because they're careless, because the system punishes timing errors when you don't have slack. The Fed's $400 question is revealing because it's not about a rare catastrophe. It's about a normal, annoying expense that hits without warning. If a household can't cover that without borrowing or selling something, it's not just short on money, it's short on time to think. The Fed notes that some who would not pay with cash may still have access to it, but choose to preserve it as a buffer. That's not irrational, it's protecting optionality. So the shift isn't, I have 3 months, therefore I'm safe. It's, I have enough time purchased that I can respond like myself. Like the version of you who can be patient, who can read the fine print, who can say no to an expensive shortcut. This also explains a quieter truth. An emergency fund isn't only for emergencies. It's for the space between your plans and your reality. Plans assume you'll notice every charge, remember every due date, and never get tired at the wrong moment. Reality includes fatigue. Reality includes a child getting sick the same week the car needs repair. Reality includes a day when you don't have the emotional energy to negotiate. A cash buffer makes those days less expensive. Not because it fixes everything, but because it reduces the price of being human. How do you think about how much without turning it into a stressful project? Stop treating the emergency fund as a trophy and treat it as a measurement of friction. When friction is high, income is variable, bills are unforgiving, dependents rely on you, the bridge needs to be sturdier. When friction is lower, income is stable, support systems exist, expenses can pause. You might need less cash for the same calm. The goal isn't hitting someone else's number. It's removing the pressure points that make small problems multiply. That's also why cash can mean different things. The CFPB describes an emergency fund as a cash reserve for unplanned expenses and notes where you keep it should be safe and accessible, while also being where you're not tempted to spend it on non-emergencies. Accessible isn't a vibe, it's a timeline. If your emergency tends to be same day, your money needs to be same-day money. If emergencies tend to be multi-week, you may have more flexibility. And if your biggest risk is income disruption, your fund is less about paying a single bill and more about keeping your baseline intact while you recover. Here's a calmer way to hold the whole idea. You're not trying to outsmart every possible disaster. You're trying to prevent the cascade. To keep one surprise from forcing a second surprise. To keep the cost of timing mistakes from becoming the main story. When you have enough emergency cash, you notice something subtle. You still feel inconvenience, but you don't feel hunted. You can look at a problem and ask, what is the true cost of solving this the fast way? And sometimes you still choose the fast way. But now it's a choice. That's the point. If you've been measuring your emergency fund by months and it's made you feel either behind or confused, try measuring it by time instead. Time until income returns. Time until resources become usable. Time until you can make decisions without your nervous system doing the budgeting. Because in real life, money isn't only a number. It's the ability to stay steady while the world is briefly unsteady.